So typically 6 o'clock on Wednesdays is when we hit never read the comments, but during training camp, we are doing our pick 6 at 6. We will keep the pick 6 at 6, which has at 6 in the name, at 6 o'clock. So that is coming up in half an hour. But right now, Anthony Haney, I need you to dig a little deeper through all that grind that you've done today, because we're taking what everyone tells us and for our own good, allegedly, and just chucking it out the window. We're gonna take a dive into the part of the internet where they tell us not to dare. They say, do not, whatever you do, read the comments section. And yet, what do?
Every Wednesday, baby, we read those comments, baby. Let's get it.
Wow. Got the extra let's get it this week. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. Let's read some comments. You can leave your comments at Craig Hoffman on YouTube on any of the on-demand content for this show or Take Command. Take Command full episodes online for YouTube at 1067 The Fan. And, of course, we stream live daily at the Team 980. Our guy Blaine watching as usual. He's excited about the Commanders' defense this year. Left that in the chat. You can chat with us during the show as well at the Team 980. But let's start off with some comments on our chat with Mike Sando yesterday, the Athletic senior NFL insider, who had some real questions about Sam Howell, both of his own, and just kind of relayed some questions that other personnel folks around the league have about Howell. If you missed the interview with Sando, 1, it's really good, and you can catch it in all our on-demand platforms. 2, if you're someone who has a lot of optimism inside you, it's probably going to make you pretty mad. And that was predictably what the comments were. Jihad Irish says, which I thought this one was interesting because it was targeted at me, not at Mike. I just asked the questions. But he says, Craig has to be the wet blanket, Sam Howell hater. He claims he isn't, but he leans into the negative side of things heavily. Also, Anthony, I must point out, I must ask this question. Why do people leave comments on my YouTube page like I'm not the one that's going to read them? When you leave a comment on the video, who are you leaving it for? When it's like, Craig does this. I got news for you. Craig doesn't have a gigantic staff of people running his YouTube page. He does it himself. I know because he is me. So, one, I don't know what people, like, why do you think people do that? It's so weird.
Maybe they want to scare other commenters away.
I don't know.
I don't know.
If I was like, hey, Anthony's wearing a great shirt today. Hey, Anthony, that new light we got you makes Anthony look good. Then that'd be weird. But if I was like, hey, man, the shirt, I like that DMV Hoop shirt. I'm talking to you. I don't, look, the internet's a weird place. Maybe this is why they say never read the comments. But that is something that is happening more often, which I think is good as we near 3,000 subscribers on the YouTube page, that folks apparently think that we're gigantic and have this big old staff of people that's like combing through the stuff. Nah, it's me. I do it myself. I do my own stunts. Anyway, to the actual point. All I'm doing on Sam Howell is saying what I see. And if that makes me a hater because I don't say things that align with what you want me to say, then I'm a hater. What it actually is, for those of us that live in reality, is I'm an analyst. I tell you what I see, and you are living in fantasy land because you want Sam Howell to be awesome. If I want to be less severe about that, you've got wishful thinking. You're seeing things through burgundy and gold colored glasses. And I'm just realistic about what Howell is at this point in his career in terms of my own observations, that he is inexperienced. He's not killing it in practice, but he's playing he's playing fine. He's playing well even in practice. We won't really know till the game because it's really hard when we're at training camp on the sidelines watching these practices to understand what situations are being repped, what situations, are advantageous to the offense, advantageous to the defense. And sometimes it takes a couple of reps to figure it out. It's like, oh, this is a blitz period. That wasn't just a random blitz on one down. It's like, oh, he's going to look bad for the next 7 snaps. Oh, this is this period. This is that period. Like, he's generally performing as expected, which, when I say as expected, in terms of the higher end of things, he's performing as you'd expect if you think he can grow into something useful this season. That's good. That makes me a hater, then, so be it, I guess. Predictably, though, a lot of the ire on our interview with Sando went towards Sando. Devin Rhodes, 4765 says, good thing these quote-unquote experts are wrong all the time. Who actually cares what they think? No one knows what will happen until it happens. Well, if that's the case, then why do we do any of this? What's the point in having a show and what's the point in talking about sports at the water cooler? That's very silly. And, Mike Sando has been doing this for 20 years. He knows more than a little bit. And more importantly, what he's saying is based off reporting he did where he talked to 50 NFL evaluators. So when Steve 4175 says, never pay attention to national media clowns, high-level writing to get clicks, nothing more, nothing less, no concrete substance in their writing reporting. This dude did a survey of 50 NFL evaluators. Just because you don't like what people say or you don't agree with it or they ultimately are even wrong doesn't mean it's not worth listening to. People need to understand when and when not to listen to people who agree with them. Some things are not really for disagreement and, basic fundamental things. I don't want to go down a quasi-political path here. So I'm going to leave that statement there. But some things are okay to disagree about when we really don't know the answers. We don't know how Sam Howell will be. And so a bunch of NFL people going hey, we didn't really like his tape, doesn't mean that they're wrong. That's their professional opinion. And it's worth listening to versus just ignoring everyone who thinks or doesn't think that he's going to the Hall of Fame. You should have a healthy dose of skepticism. We'll see. It doesn't mean that they're right, but it doesn't mean that you're right either. But talking about it is fun. The ways in which it could go well, the ways in which it could go wrong. That's the whole point of all of this. So calling people clowns and, saying that they're in it for the clicks when you've got incredibly talented people who are well connected around the league doing good reporting on your team is a good way to have that not happen. So, let's not do that. I think this was just a funny aside, Anthony. I think this was on the Benjamin St. Just interview. Someone goes, "Cool beans, man." That was who was that? That was Mr. K Hall 2002. To which Slasher YT says, "No way, my dog said cool beans."
That's all he said was cool beans.
He goes, "Cool beans, man."
Wow.
I thought that was pretty funny. It's a pretty funny. Sometimes the commenters go at themselves or comment on the comment, and it's the best material on the page. How am I supposed to compete with that?
You can't.
We'll try our best. We had economist JC Bradbury on to talk about RFK Stadium as a potential site for the Commanders to return to. Opie Jokey says, build for the community, not for the Commanders. And I think that's true. The question is, what actually is best for the community? And this kind of gets to the heart of the question that I was asking JC and that I think I've been asking overall when it comes to this stadium issue, which is they have to play somewhere. And this is where we ended the interview with JC. The Commanders have to play somewhere, which means you need to build a stadium somewhere. there's a very large part of this community that cares about this team. But ultimately, even of the caring part, there is some percentage of them that will actually go to games and even smaller percentage that will go to games regularly. Even if they were to build a new stadium, that's a 50,000 seat stadium, and 40,000 of those were sold as season tickets, which would be an insanely high percentage, right? 40,000 people going to 10 games a week. 40,000 out of a metro area of, depending on where you draw the lines, 5 to 8 million people is an absurdly small percentage. Actually, I'll do the math. Let's make it 40,000 of 8 million is 0.005. So that's a 0.5% of the entire DC metro area. So the considerations of traffic, the considerations of what goes around the stadium or what could go in the stadium's place, like those are the real questions you're trying to ask here, while also accepting that, again, it's got to go somewhere. And that's where I just kind of still go back to the RFK site and go, for fans and folks who want to go to concerts and whatever, like location-wise, I don't think you're going to do much better in terms of centralization, in terms of access with public transportation, all of those things. This wasn't a YouTube comment, but I did get a tweet that also made me really think, and I can't believe I didn't think of this myself, because this is an essential question to ask someone like a JC Bradbury, this economist from Kennesaw State, who was quoted in Barry's Ferluga story and then joined us earlier this week. Professor Bradbury made the parallel to his own backyard, where the Atlanta Braves have built in Cobb County, Georgia, suburban Georgia, and there was all this economic promise, and none of it has come through. And Bradbury is a guy who studied the economics of stadiums for years, and part of the reason why some of the PR around what a stadium does is BS is because if you were going to go out to dinner and then go to the game, like you probably would have gone out to dinner anyway. There actually isn't that much added value of the stadium. And then there's obviously a lot of loss potential, or / there traditionally have been a lot of losses because, now you've got people inside the stadium and not going out doing other things, spending money on other things. There's all the traffic that kind of makes that area moot for a game night event. If you're like a grocery store in that neighborhood, then good luck on a game day with all the extra people. Like, people are not going to go shopping. So it becomes this massive loss despite, and really kind of a shifting of resources from one bucket that you own to another in terms of the tax revenue and things like that. But what this tweeter said that I thought was very good was, and a good point, is if the stadium's built in Virginia, DC gets no tax revenue unless there's some kind of potential agreement that funnels through Metro, the main thing that connects both, systematically and literally connects DC, Maryland, and Virginia, right? They all feed into and get fed by WMATA. But all the tax revenue from the purchase of the land to the upkeep of the stadium and obviously the property and whatever other taxes go on a stadium. Anthony, this will stun you, but I don't own a professional sports stadium, so I actually am not sure of the tax implications. I don't even own a house. I just rent. I don't rent a stadium either. I rent an apartment.
Wow, that is news to me, Craig.
Yeah, stunning.
It truly is.
Stunning. But DC gets none of that. Whatever those tax implications are, DC gets none of it if the stadium's in Virginia or in Maryland. So is it actually a different scenario? Are the economics different? Clearly the answer is yes, but to what extent and in what direction, that I don't know. But it's something that I thought was very, very interesting and a very good point, and something that I don't even know how much you could study because I don't know how many other places like deal with this. Obviously, there are stadiums. I guess there are teams that play, quote unquote, outside the jurisdiction that you would think. What happened when the 49ers moved from Candlestick Park to Santa Clara? Like, how did that affect San Francisco City? Assuming that Candlestick was, I think it's just inside the city lines, but I can't remember exactly. My Bay Area geography is not incredible. I've only been there a couple times. But Santa Clara is like way south, completely different, city level jurisdiction, and might even be a different county. But certainly, obviously, the state of California gets their share no matter where. The Jets and Giants play in New Jersey, but they haven't played in New York ever, or since like the Giants were in the Polo Grounds. So we're talking about, decades and decades and decades ago. But they've been in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and New Jersey getting that money for the main portion of the NFL's like booming business era, Super Bowl era, etc. So there's just not a lot of precedent for a team building a stadium in a different like state level jurisdiction, and what that means for the tax implications, and thus what it means for the city coffers, to use Mayor Bowser's term. And I think that's a really interesting point that I wish I had better answers on. As for more like logistical and emotional level on the RFK versus FedEx versus other options, it's either Mr. Swerve-On or Miss Werve-On. These are the things that you have to consider, Anthony. Is that a Mr. Swerve-On or MRS Mrs. Werve-On? I'm going to probably say it's Mr. Swerve-On, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think I would go with the latter.
Anyway, the commenter on the interwebs, said, if fans hate FedEx, they're going to hate RFK. This is not the 80s and 90s. It's a totally different DC. The commute will be worse than FedEx, and there won't be as much parking as FedEx. You go over there and look at the parking. It's not much. I know the metro is there, but that doesn't change anything. Nostalgia does not defeat the demographic and population change in a city. I think this is both a really good point filled with all the wrong details. DC is different now than it was in the 80s and 90s. And we say DC in this particular case. I'm going to say the DMV is very different. The mass migrations in and out of the city by all kinds of different demographic groups, the changing economy of the city, certain parts of town that were one way, served a certain population at one point, gentrified or ignored and have switched, or whatever the different dynamics have been. And obviously there's been more and more people coming to the area in general. But when you talk about the RFK site specifically, the metro is a huge difference. I can tell you right now, as a district resident who lives not far from a metro stop, if I had to go to RFK on a game day, I would 100% take the metro. I will never take the metro to FedEx Field. It's too far, for one. I hate being on the metro that long. When I used to live in Reston, I metroed into the city like 3 times, and I was like, I can't do this. I don't need an hour train ride into the city. This is insane. I can drive there in 35 minutes. It becomes incredibly inefficient unless you are at mad rush hour and there's a wreck. So that's part one. It is way more accessible for district residents and, frankly, for a lot of PG County residents that are close to the district on that side of town, on the east side of town. Like for Virginia suburban residents getting there on the metro, you could, but it's a hike. But you could also potentially drive somewhere in the city and take the metro, like a 15, 20-minute metro, and park somewhere else. So that's thing one. Thing two, it's not developed yet. So to look at what is there now and just assume they'll knock down the stadium, build up a new one, and everything that is parking will remain parking, and that's it. That's the end of the construction project, is a severe misunderstanding of what the construction project is. So there would be a lot more parking, and hopefully there would also be a widening / updating of the ins and the outs over there, so that there is a better traffic flow pattern than if you just tried to jam 50,000 people into the current RFK site. So I think that the demographic changes, the difference in the city in general is a very, very good point. The specifics about the RFK site compared to the absolute craptastic location that FedEx Field has been since the late 1990s, because some of the things that the Snyders were supposed to do and were supposed to work on with the county and the city and the state never came to fruition. Yeah, I would say that the RFK site's would be an upgrade if that were to come to fruition. But we'll see. We will see. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 every single weekday, 4 to 7. Wednesdays, never read the comments. Make sure you get your comments in at Craig Hoffman on YouTube. Of course, watching it live at the Team 980. And occasionally we also read some comments from Take Command, which you can catch in full at 1067 The Fan on YouTube and your favorite podcast app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.